Brad, you could have taken a wait and see approach with Sheldon and evaluated him throughout the upcoming season. Why was it important for you to get this done now?
Well, thanks, Mark. A few things. You're right. I've taken, as I've said, I think earlier, since taking the job, one of the things that I've spent a lot of time with is getting to know Sheldon and spending a lot of time with him, um, having a lot of discussions about the team. Um, just his overall thoughts of our group and sort of what's happened in the past and how do we best move forward. Um, so you take all that information and I reflect on it and a few things. So number one, first and foremost, is I think it's my belief, um, you know, having watched it from the outside, then having spent a lot of time with Sheldon over the summer here, is that I think Sheldon's the top coach. I think he's a really, really good coach. I think he's dug in with this group. I think he's smart. I think he's a great communicator. I think he relates well with the players. Um, and I keep coming back to it. I when you've got good people, you want to keep them, and so it made sense to me. I think a byproduct. I know a lot of people may speculate that the reason it's done is the noise and the distractions. I think as a manager, you're always trying to eliminate distractions, but I want to be clear. That's a byproduct of this. This gets done because I really think we've got a good coach here, and his record in the regular season has proved it. He's still, what he's done in his young career here is puts him with some real good company in terms of coaches, past and present. So the more I went through this process with Sheldon, the more it made a whole lot of sense, to get something done, get him looked after, get that behind us, give him some peace of mind, and again get everything focused where it needs to be, which is the start of camp and getting our team up and going.
He's made a positive impression, obviously, on you since you arrived. What has impressed you the most? You highlighted his leadership in the statement that was sent out. Like, what have you seen since you've been in your role that has really impressed you?
Well, a few things. I think he's got a real good relationship with our players. I think it's not about being liked as a coach; it's about being respected. And the conversations that I have with our coaches, I think or with our players, there's a great deal of respect. I think he's a student of his craft. Um, he's constantly looking at ways to get better. This is throughout the course of the summer, and we talk daily, and he's really dug into finding ways, um, to make the individuals better. I think he's a deep thinker. He's cerebral, um, and like I said, the time, the effort, and the work he puts towards his craft, it's impressive. And so I don't know if there's one thing, Mark, that I would say there's an aha moment. It's just as you go through, it's like building any relationship. As time goes on, you get a better understanding. Listen, I realize we haven't played any games and we haven't been in the battle together yet. Um, but I've spent enough time with him to really understand this. He's really knowledgeable. Um, so his brain, his work ethic, the way he treats people, the way he works together with his staff, and that communication he has with the players, I think is excellent. And so when you put all those things together, to me, it was the right decision.
Next up, we'll go to Terry Koshan, Toronto Sun. Go ahead, Terry.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for doing this today. I suppose you kind of answer in that answer, or address it, but what gives you the confidence that Sheldon can be the guy to lead this team deep into a playoff run and potentially a Stanley Cup victory.
Well, thanks, Terry. I mean, I think probably a lot of the same things I just said. I know we're all focused and at sort of the end of the end goal here. There's a lot of steps that you have to take before you get there, and you have to put yourself in a position year after year to get to the dance, to give yourself an opportunity, and Sheldon's done that each and every year. And I know it's been talked about, in this market for a long time, what's happened at the end of the season, the last few years, but you have to keep putting yourselves in those positions to have those opportunities. And to me, this to have success in this league, you got to keep knocking on the door. You have to be good for a long time and consistently be a good team. And it just gives you another ticket to the ball. And you keep knocking on that door, till you eventually, knock it down. And, when I just look at all the attributes, to me that are important for a coach, Sheldon's got them. And, he's, like I said, I'm just impressed with how he conducts his business. And this guy's, he's got a deep passion for this team. He's, I've pushed him to get out of town there and turn his phone off for a couple of days and just get away from it. But I mean, he's constantly thinking about how he can push this team and the group of players collectively and individually further. And so obviously, it's through that, Terry, and the time I've spent, and the questions we've gone through, that I feel he is the right guy for the job.
Thanks, Rod.
Next up, we'll go to Dave McCarthy, NHL.com. Go ahead, Dave.
Hey, Brad, when you were going through your evaluation process with Sheldon, how much did you solicit the input of the players, and what kind of feedback did you get from the players on what they thought of the job that Sheldon had done?
Yeah, I think you certainly, I do certainly take feedback from the players, no question. And it's a little bit interesting, Dave, because I'm still getting to know the players. So, it's a little bit of a unique situation. And, at the end of the day, you got to be careful sometimes, whether, the player piece, you can obviously players that have been around a lot longer and have been through, some time in the league, been through some time with Sheldon. It's not a popularity contest, but you can tell when a coach has had an impact on them, and when they believe, that the coach has had an impact on their team, and that, they get pushed. And that was one of the things that came back to me real consistently from the players, that it wasn't, it's not they're going to bat for their buddy per se, as much as, they believe that, they've grown as a group. There's uncomfortable times at certain times, because he's demanding, and he expects a lot. He pushes these guys. But there's a real trust factor. What I gathered from the players is they trust him. They trust that he's doing the right thing by them. That it's going to be hard, and you have to be demanding, or he is demanding, and I think you have to be demanding as a coach. That's part of this profession. Is you have to, you're trying to strike that balance between demanding and that relationship piece. And it's a balancing act, but there's not every day is kumbaya in this business, and part of coaching and part of professional sports is conflict. I believe that, and I think it makes you better. But I guess it's a long way of saying that the feedback from the players was, in strong support of Sheldon, and how not only, the things he's done to make that group better, but each individual, how he's pushed them individually. So, there's a strong belief for the players and support of the players of Sheldon for sure.
Next up, we'll go to Luke Fox, Sportsnet. Go ahead, Luke.
Thanks for doing this, Brad. Just
Yep.
building on that idea of, not everything being kumbaya. What is your take from your experience on a coach calling out players publicly, like say post game or demanding more publicly in front of the media? How harmful is it? How helpful is it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think every coach has sort of got their own style. At the end of the day, the ultimate job of the coach is to maximize the performance of the individual and therefore the performance of the team. And there's different ways to do it. And like I said, some days it's not all rainbows and lollipops. This is a hard business and it's a hard league, and to do great things is difficult, and you have to push people out of their comfort zone. So I think there's always ways that you can push players. I think you want to be careful. I've always felt that the hardest conversations are usually best handled behind closed doors. And I don't think a player needs to be admonished publicly to understand, if there's something that the coach feels he needs to get better at. Having said that, it's an emotional game. Things happen. I'm sure there's going to be emotional times this year, and there will be next year and the year after, and there always is. It's when you live in this business and you work in it, and this is what you do, and you're invested the way everybody is invested. Sometimes there's emotional. There's an emotional shrapnel that sometimes comes up, and it probably. I haven't been through it in Toronto. I'm sure it flies right under the radar in Toronto, and nothing ever gets printed or there's no headlines for it, I'm sure. But what I found out is 9 times out of 10, that's just a little bit of noise and emotion. You certainly probably don't want that every day, but to think that you're not going to have some of that every once in a while, we're probably kidding ourselves. But I think you handle your business as men behind closed doors, face to face, and I'm sure that's how a lot of it will be handled here moving forward.
Hey, Brad, I was just wondering how you land on 2 years for the extension for Sheldon.
Well, Jonas, that's assuming it is 2 years, right? No, it is 2 years. Good call. I just felt it's the right number. Sheldon's got a year left on his contract. So he's under contract right now for the next 3 years. And I think it's the right number. It strikes the balance for I think recognizing what I believe both Sheldon has done to this point, but also showing the belief that I have in him moving forward. So I think it's a fair and appropriate contract, and Sheldon and I both agreed when we went through it, as we had our discussions, and fell on this number that it worked for both of us, and I think not to speak for Sheldon, but I think we're both very comfortable with it.
And last one here, we'll go to John Chidley Hill with Canadian Press. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Brad, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah.
You spoke glowingly of Sheldon's leadership skills. I was wondering if you could give us a specific example of when his leadership has impressed you.
Well, I think, there's a lot of stuff just in when I look at coming in here, I guess accountability would be a good word. When I first came in, Sheldon was real, I guess, transparent and honest and accountable for what's gone on here. I look at I look at, as we look to get better, I always think you first start with yourself, and critiquing your own performance. And I think Sheldon has done that. I look at what he does over the course of the summer in terms of connecting with our players, getting their feedback on certain things. Also looking at ways that we can change. I mean, it's really easy, the success this team has had in the regular season, it'd be safe to say, okay, we're not going to, we're going to stay status quo, but he's exploring and sort of pushing the envelope on ways that we can be better. I can tell you a lot of the conversations when we were going through free agency, obviously I would talk to the players and the representative, but I had Sheldon talk to all the players prior to us committing to anybody, and the feedback he'd get from those players was how impressive he was in talking to. I look at the staff that he's put together. We sat down and talked about, we wanted to put together the very, very best staff we could. And, he went out and found what he felt was the best people in those jobs. I look at Guy Boucher, who's been a head coach in this league before. Sheldon's not worried about making decisions that, may or may not be in his best interest publicly. Hiring a guy who's been a head coach before, and the narrative that could go around that. He's going out to find the very best coach for our team and for the job that he saw fit. So I think there's countless examples in my short period of time with him. And that, it is a position of leadership. At the end of the day, he's in charge of the team. And you don't have success as a team without strong leadership behind the bench. And so I believe he has it in spades.